Yeah.
Hello, I'm Darren Levine. I'm here to tell you about the Krav Maga self-defense and fighting system. Krav Maga was originally developed in Israel for the Israeli army. It was also taught to their security forces, their internal security, their secret service, and their police departments. The system is based on natural techniques, a response to danger. Krav Maga means contact combat. That's the literal translation from Hebrew. It is a modern-day survival system, self-defense and fighting system developed to bring people up to a high level of safety, personal safety, in a short period of time. The system deals with real-life attacks, such as attacks from people who approach an individual with a gun, a knife, or a stick, or even approach by choking, putting someone in a bear hug. Headlocks, a variety of type of strikes, punches, kicks, elbows, and also whether the attacker takes the person who's defending down to the ground and is attacking them on the ground. It also deals with realistic settings, not just on the street, but perhaps in one's home, dealing with confined areas. If one is in their bed when someone is attacked, dealing with the office setting, sitting at a desk when someone comes and may approach you with a weapon or some type of other attack. So it is a modern system developed to bring people to a high level of personal safety in a relatively short period of time. The Krav Maga system was founded and created by an individual by the name of Emi Lichtenfeld. And perhaps if you understand his history, his life, and where he came from, you can understand why Krav Maga became the practical system of self-defense and fighting that it is. Emi was born in actually Hungary and soon thereafter moved to Czechoslovakia. And he was very close with his father. His father, Samuel, happened to be the chief detective for the Bratislava Police Department, and in fact was known throughout Europe for how many homicide cases he had worked and solved. But the most important thing, I think, in Emi's life was that his father opened the first gym for physical exercise and self-defense training in Europe. The club was known as Hercules, and at a very early time in Emi's life, he found himself on the mats training in self-defense techniques, in boxing, in jiu-jitsu, in wrestling. And in fact, this club was used by Emi's father to train many, many police departments and police officers for personal safety. Soon thereafter, in the 30s, when the Nazis came to power, Emi found the difference between what was a sports competition that he had engaged in and what would be a fight for your life on the streets. He received really wide fame in his little community for fighting the fascists, engaging in street fights. And he was fighting not people who were just duking it out with their fists, but he was fighting people who were armed with weapons, sticks, clubs, knives, and even guns. And it didn't take him long to recognize that when you're fighting in sports, that's one thing. But when you're making a true life fight to save yourself or another person, it's a whole different ballgame. And so the roots of Krav Maga come from his practical street experience in Europe. Well, once Emi left Europe, he faced a 2-year journey to finally his destination, which was Palestine. And once he arrived in Palestine, he ended up fighting with a group called the Haganah, which was the Jewish underground that was trying to fight for the state of Israel. And what was his job in the Haganah? As soon as people recognized his physical abilities, he began at a very early time training the Haganah and their soldiers in how to fight, in how to use a rifle, in how to roll, in how to do obstacle courses, in how to perform self-defense techniques, whether someone was attacked by a choke or some other common attack, and also, of course, if someone dealt or had to deal with an armed subject. So by the time he made it to Israel, he was already working in the underground teaching people self-defense. And once Israel was formed and the Israeli Defense Forces became the army of the region, he was named chief instructor of hand-to-hand combat and physical fitness of the whole army. His system, Krav Maga, was still a work in progress. He wrote the first manual for self-defense and fighting in hand-to-hand combat for the Israeli Defense Forces, which still, to this day, is being used in the field. He is responsible for making the Israeli army, for training their soldiers to be the world-renowned fighters that they are. I think what is important about our system is that we try and find the easiest way to deal with a threat, the most practical way, the method that solves the most problems so that people are truly defending themselves against all possible types of danger in a given scenario. Krav Maga spread to the United States in about 1981, and what had happened was the Israeli Ministry of Education and the Israeli Defense Forces wanted to see this system spread to people around the world as a sign of goodwill, to share something of value with the world. And in 1981, a delegation of 23 people went to Israel for a very, very intense course, a 6-week-long course. After that course, there was a week where we tested. People received a degree, a limited teaching degree, and people came back to the United States and began to teach. The system took off in Los Angeles, and by 1983 already, there were literally hundreds and hundreds of people training in Krav Maga. By 1985, a few people in an unofficial capacity started coming to classes that were actually for civilians, but these people happened to be employed as law enforcement officers. And as soon as they saw the techniques, how easy they were to perform, how quickly they could be learned, how they could be done in real time, under real stress, these representatives of law enforcement started to take this Krav Maga system back to their departments. And the departments started flocking to Krav Maga in about 1985, and we started to set up official training programs for police departments.
Basically, I was blown away by the system, totally. The techniques were totally unique. I had never seen techniques like that.
Krav Maga is probably the best defensive tactics system to come to law enforcement in the last 20 years. It's simple, it's effective, it's practical, and it works.
All the officers that we've trained in Krav Maga end up having nothing but good to say about it. They love it, they enjoy the training, they've built self-confidence as a result of the training, and they feel when they're out in the street then they have something to back them up.
It's a great system. They learn it very quickly, and it's a very efficient system. It's hands-on, right away.
They finally had a system that could deal with true life violence. The type of attacks that officers face in the street could be answered through the defenses that Krav Maga provided. But more importantly, I think it was interesting that law enforcement recognized they did not have the luxury of prolonged training periods for their personnel. They can't give their personnel complicated answers for problems. In other words, they needed something that was simple and realistic. And Krav Maga fits that bill. And to this day, state, federal, local agencies have instructors training their people in Krav Maga so that their officers will be safe in dealing with real-life violent crime. At the time that the diploma was presented to me, the teaching degree, Amy looked up at me and said, one day, you're going to be responsible for Krav Maga in the United States. And in fact, next summer I'm going to come live with you and train you. And in fact, the very next summer he was with me. And he did live with me and my family and provided me with incredible training. And what was really special about it is we started teaching courses together that following year. And to this day, my work in the United States has been supported by the association, the International Federation of Krav Maga, and of course, Emi Lichtenfeld while he was alive. Just before his death, I was promoted to a 6th degree black belt in the system, and also one of only 2 people to receive what was referred to as a founder's diploma, a special recognition for those instructors who have contributed to the Krav Maga system in terms of exercises and technique, and in development and spreading the knowledge of Krav Maga to the people who need it. On the issue of how long it takes to become proficient in this system, I think it's important to note that this depends somewhat on the person who's training. But what we've found is that within a very short period of time, let's say training in about 20 hours of training, people are learning how to give a punch, how to give other strikes like elbows, knees, and kicks, how to defend against those types of attacks, how to function in the fight, how to stand, how to be aware of their environment, how to flee from a scene safely so that you're not injured, and also a variety of self-defense attacks. The system really encompasses many more things than just basic exercises. It develops the fighting spirit. It develops one's ability to go from a passive state to a state of action without hesitating. Because Krav Maga is a modern-day street survival system, we don't just rely merely on our personal weapons, such as punches and kicks and knees and elbows, but we also are trained to use our environment, to use common everyday objects. We want people to function at their best. And if that means someone comes to do you